Those are the things that really make us alive to who we are, to who God made us to be. So to be filled in the sense that Jesus is talking about is to have that sense of being satisfied, being nurtured, finding life. The kind of life that God wants us to be full of. It is the life that Jesus referred to when he gave the reason for his coming. He said in John chapter 10, verse 10, I've come that you might have life and that you might have it to the full. A life that is filled or satisfies encompasses so much more than just eating bread or drinking water. The fact is, we all desire a life that is satisfying, a life that is full, a life that is rich, a life that is purposeful. The problem is that while we are seeking that life, too often we are looking to find it in the wrong places. Some people pursue it in their profession, in their career. They work 70, 80 hours a week. Climbing that corporate ladder, only to find out they're not satisfied. They're stressed. Their health is not as good as it was. Some people pursue that by looking for it in relationships, looking for the right person. Some people try to find it through thrill seeking, only to find that thrills don't last. And the next one requires more risk. The list can go on and on. What those dead-end streets reveal to us is that our passions, our desires, can be misguided. It reminds me of the story I read about a young man who knelt before a beautiful young woman beside a placid lake. Darling, he said, I want you to know I love you more than life. I want you to marry me. I'm not a wealthy man. I don't have a yacht or a Rolls Royce or a lot of money like Jimmy Smith, but I do love you with all my heart. The young woman paused for a moment and said, Darling, I love you too. But before I say yes, tell me more about Jimmy Smith. Our passions can be misguided. These things, careers, relationships, thrills, drugs, whatever, provide temporary and misguided feeling. They're like eating a bag of Doritos for your dinner. You might be bloated at the time you ate that. You might think you were filled and satisfied, but it doesn't last. It's not the richness that your life needs. Jesus offers us the blessing of being filled in life. Jesus said those who hunger and thirst for righteousness as much as they do for a cheeseburger and a Coke will be filled. It's important that we understand those two words, who hunger and thirst. For the first word, hunger, comes from the Greek word paineo, which means to crave ardently, to seek with eager desire. That Greek word for thirst is doxeo, meaning to painfully feel their want, to eagerly long for. Do you hear the intensity, the drive, the longing to crave ardently, to painfully feel for that, to be satisfied? Blessed are those who hunger and thirst, who have an intense desire for righteousness, for they will be filled. They will experience the fullness of life. So my friend, it is righteousness that we need to have this intense desire for, so that we will be filled with that fullness. Now when you and I think of righteousness, we probably do think that, like Eric said, about doing things that are right, about living in right ways. No doubt the people of Jesus' day thought the very same things. People had over them a group of religious leaders called Pharisees, who were looked at as living the most righteous life. To the people, the Pharisees were the examples of righteousness. The Pharisees did the right things. They studied the Old Testament law. They attended the services in the temple and in the synagogues. They tied everything, down to their garden vegetables and mint and other things. They did all the right things. So when the people heard Jesus said, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness," no doubt they thought of the Pharisees, and they thought about how real hard they would have to be like those Pharisees. But what is interesting, as you look in that 5th chapter of Matthew, a few verses down in verse 20, Jesus said this, "For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven." What? If I'm not as righteous as a Pharisee now, how in the world can I surpass them? You know, my friend, Jesus often spoke in ways that required us to think. Jesus often spoke in parables to those who really didn't want to hear, who would do it their way so they wouldn't understand. He didn't want to cast his pearls before them. When Jesus talks about righteousness, he does not mean a righteousness that comes from yourself, based on your actions. You know, it was back in 1886 that Robert Louis Stevenson wrote a classical story that exposed everybody's life. He called it Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Although a little older, Stevenson was a contemporary of Mark Twain, the American storyteller. And perhaps it was from that classical book of Stevenson's, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that Mark Twain came up with this statement. Everybody is a moon and has a dark side which he never shows to anybody. No one said it better than Jesus when he spoke sternly of the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. You are like whitewashed tombs, Jesus said, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of dead men's bones and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside, you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside, you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. The Pharisees were self-righteous. They were righteous, all right. They were relying on their own righteousness that came from themselves. They made up the rules, and they had people do those things. But they forgot that the Old Testament prophet Isaiah said that when you and I initiate righteousness from our own actions, in our own strength, Isaiah said those things are like filthy rags. Unfortunately, many people today, perhaps some of us, do the same thing. We try to determine what is righteous enough in our eyes. People come up with the idea, well, I don't need to go to church every week. I don't need to serve on a committee or a position of leadership. I can just sit in the pew. I don't need to offer God or people those things. So that's why churches come up with rules. People follow rules. Don't drink, don't smoke, don't chew, don't go with girls who do that kind of thing. Our own rules. What we think is good enough. My friend, none of these things will make you righteous. None of these things or other human created rules will ingratiate you to a holy God who requires perfect righteousness, not human goodness. You heard me right. That God requires perfect righteousness. Jesus did not mean a righteousness that comes from ourselves based on our efforts. Jesus means a righteousness that comes from God through faith in Jesus Christ. Romans chapter 3. Therefore, no one will be declared righteous in his sight by observing the law. Rather, though through the law we become conscious of sin. But now a righteousness from God, apart from the law, has been made known, to which the law and the prophets testify. This righteousness from God through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. My friend, the only real happiness in life, truly, is to be right with your Creator. The only way to be right with your Creator is through faith in Jesus Christ. May I dare ask you, have you placed your faith in God's Savior, His Son, that He would declare you or me righteous?